All right, let's just jump right into it, shall we? If you own a short-term rental property, you have absolutely wrestled with this age-old dilemma: Airbnb or Booking.com. On the surface, it sounds like a simple choice between two different logos, but, if you've ever actually ventured into a host forum, you know it's practically a turf war out there. So welcome to this explainer. Today, we are moving totally beyond the guesswork and the online forum debates. We're going to look at cold, hard data to uncover how these two giants actually perform in the real world.
Here is our quick investigative roadmap for today. We're kicking things off with the ultimate platform showdown. Then we'll look at who drives more revenue, followed by the daily rate illusion. After that, we'll cover seasonality and stay length, and finally, we'll wrap the whole thing up with building a multi-channel strategy.
Okay, Section 1, the ultimate platform showdown. Let's look at the data behind the debate.
Before we get into the heavy numbers, I really want you to ask yourself a question. Which platform do you instinctively think is better? You hear it all the time, right? People say Airbnb is way more profitable, or they'll tell you Booking.com is strictly for hotels. So which one do you naturally assume brings in higher revenue, or even better guests? Just keep those personal biases in the back of your mind as we start unpacking the data.
To make sure we have absolute credibility here, let's start with this focal number, 437. We are not relying on vague estimates or some broad global survey. We are analyzing exactly 437 confirmed active bookings. And to put that into perspective, those represent 2,363 nights from Planbnb's Hosthub export in the Kavala region of Greece. This is a real reservation-level analysis across managed rentals comparing actual confirmed value and booking counts. Basically, this is as real as it gets.
Moving on to Section 2. Who drives more revenue? Let's talk about Booking.com's massive scale. This just brilliantly illustrates the reality of the situation. Booking.com captured a frankly staggering 82.9% of the two-channel accommodation booking value. That leaves Airbnb with just 17.1%. Let that sink in for a second. Booking.com generated almost 5 times Airbnb's confirmed accommodation value. When it comes to pure volume, it is an absolute monster.
And that dominance totally continues when we look at the actual nights stayed. The difference in scale here is just huge. We are looking at 1,994 nights booked on Booking.com versus a mere 369 on Airbnb. Booking.com's massive revenue lead didn't just come from a handful of really lucky, super expensive reservations. It came from sustained, relentless volume across more homes and a whole lot more stays.
So here is the real kicker. Booking.com generated 370 active reservations compared to Airbnb's 67. That is 452% more bookings. Booking.com had confirmed stays on 27 different properties compared to just 15 for Airbnb. What this data absolutely proves is that Booking.com is the underlying engine for scale and reach within this portfolio. Honestly, if you are ignoring it, you are leaving a massive chunk of available demand just sitting on the table.
All right, Section 3. The daily rate illusion. Time to peel back the onion on ADR. We really need to dig into the average daily rate, or ADR, because the data here has a pretty major suspenseful twist. Here is the headline number that immediately catches everyone's eye. Airbnb has a portfolio-wide ADR advantage of 11.5%. If we set Booking.com's ADR to an index of 100, Airbnb scored a 111.5. On top of that, Airbnb had a 14% higher average booking value. So, at first glance, this makes Airbnb look like the undeniable premium pricing winner, right? It really seems to validate that old myth that Airbnb guests are just willing to pay more.
But hold on, drop the plot twist, because when you actually compare apples to apples, the story completely changes. Out of the entire portfolio we looked at, only 5 properties had at least 5 active bookings on each channel. When we isolate just that specific matched property group, that 11.5% advantage completely vanishes. It plummets to a microscopic 0.9% advantage for Airbnb. The rates essentially converged to be exactly the same.
And I think this sums up our detective work perfectly. Airbnb's apparent rate advantage depends heavily on property mix. Correlation is not causation. That initial 11.5% gap, it was a total property mix illusion all along. It heavily depended on which specific types of properties were producing bookings on each platform at that time. So that big headline premium absolutely shouldn't be described as some built-in Airbnb advantage.
Section 4. Seasonality and stay length. Let's uncover some strategic utility here.
Okay, so we've busted the rate myth. Now let's uncover where Airbnb actually flexes its muscle. And actually, can we just bust one more myth right here? A ton of hosts believe Airbnb is the place for longer stays, but the average stay length is incredibly similar between the two. Airbnb reservations averaged 5.51 nights, and Booking.com averaged 5.39 nights. That is a difference of practically nothing, just 0.12 nights. Plus, both platforms had a median stay of exactly 5 nights. So what does this mean? It means neither channel can claim to be the definitive long-stay platform here. Guests are staying for the exact same amount of time, regardless of which logo is at the top of their confirmation email.
Now, where things get really fascinating is the seasonality aspect. Booking.com totally dominates the crazy summer peak of July and August, holding a whopping 85.1% of the booking value. But look closely at the shoulder season. We're talking April to June and September to October. Suddenly, Airbnb's share of the value jumps from 14.9% up to 23.8%. On top of that, Airbnb's shoulder season average booking value was nearly 40% higher than Booking.com's. So while Booking.com undoubtedly wins the summer volume game, Airbnb becomes a much more meaningful and lucrative contributor during those really crucial off-peak months.
We do need to briefly touch on cancellation risk as well. The data observed Booking.com with a 33.4% cancellation share, compared to Airbnb at 14.9%. But we've got to be super cautious here. This is an internal risk signal. It is not a final, undeniable verdict. The early history in this data export is incomplete, and future bookings can obviously still change status. But most importantly, these figures are just observational. They don't prove that the platform itself actually causes the cancellations. It's really just a metric to keep an eye on for your own internal risk management.
Section 5. The multi-channel strategy. Time to build your ultimate mix.
We've gathered all our clues, we've busted some major myths. Now it's time to bring the whole shebang together. The absolute key takeaway from all this is understanding a true multi-channel strategy. Choosing a platform isn't about picking a single winner like it's a horse race. It's about using Booking.com as your primary engine for massive scale and volume, while super smartly leveraging Airbnb as a complementary tool for rate diversity, high-value stays, and that absolutely crucial shoulder season demand. If you rely on just one platform, you're concentrating all your risk and totally hiding property-specific opportunities.
So, the takeaway for property owners boils down to these 3 highly actionable steps. First, judge by role, not by one single league table. You need Booking.com's incredible scale to fill your calendars, and you need Airbnb to add that rate diversity. Second, always compare a property against itself. Don't just look at broad portfolio averages. Look at how both channels perform on the exact same sellable dates for the exact same home. And third, absolutely maintain your off-peak availability. Keep your content, your pricing, and your calendar super strong on both platforms well beyond the summer peak, because as we just saw, Airbnb's relative contribution really shines in those shoulder months.
And that brings us to the very end of our explainer. The correct operational approach going forward is to stop asking which logo wins and start asking a much better question. Which specific channel mix will unlock your specific property's true potential during a specific period? The data makes it crystal clear that they both have very distinct, vital roles to play. You've got to use them strategically, measure them accurately, and just let the data guide your success. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the numbers.